Okay.
This is here, and I'm going to hit record here.
Recording in progress.
We should start?
I'm ready.
Okay. Good morning. Special thank you to Nachman Fried and all the Zeitlins and all the gold rings and everyone else, especially my Rebbe, Reb Chaim Kramer, and BRI. We are in Torah Zion, and we finished last week paragraph Hey. The Hempstead is really the following, just as a quick summary. We're talking about the only person who can be a true leader of Klal Yisrael is a Rachaman of the category of Moshe Rabbeinu, who had the greatest compassion on the Jewish people, and the Ikka compassion, the main compassion, was Dafka specifically when the Jewish people faltered. Specifically the Chet HaEgel, golden calf, the Meraglim. These were amongst the worst aveus we ever did collectively, or participated in, or at least we were witness to and didn't do anything about it in terms of watching the Erev Rav do the Chet HaEgel. But Moshe Rabbeinu's Rahmanos extended down to the lowest Jew, to the point where he even put his own life on his line. So the question then began, how does a person do Aveiras? So Rav Nachman tells us the only way to do an Aveira is if Has v'Shalom, a person lacks das. And the worst Yisurin is actually Avoinus, is much, much worse than actual physical pain, is the pain of the neshama experiencing Aveiras, doing violations against Hashem. So how does a person get das? So in order to avoid Aveira in the first place, so das refers to the mind. We might look a little bit more in that soon when we get into paragraph Vav, which we're about to start in a few moments. So how does one avoid Aveiras? So one needs das. Where do you get that das? The das is brought down to us from the tzaddik. That started off with Moshe Rabbeinu in really the introduction to this whole Torah, which is Ate Hareta Ladat. You've been shown to know Ki Hashem Hu Elokim. Hashem is the power of all powers. Ein Oid Milvado. Nothing else exists, and that's the Ikar Das. So we looked at that in a lot of detail. So the next part is, well, if you don't have immediate access to that tzaddik, you can't read the words of the tzaddik, where else can you go? And the answer is, when you speak in Yirat Shemayim between two people, that is also one person injecting das in the other, and it goes both ways. So that is a true friend. And then we got into last week the qualities of a true friend. It has to be Yirei Shemayim, and someone who is Yirei Chet as well, for the kiyum of whatever they talk to each other, for that to be preserved and remain, have a continuity that requires not just Yirat Shemayim but also Yirat Chet. So now the Torah switches to a whole new dimension, which Rav Nachman is going to introduce to us, and that is called Makifim, Eires HaMakifim. That when two people are talking in Yirat Shemayim, something else is taking place, and that is that they are, so to speak, growing each other's minds. So this will introduce us to a concept called Eires HaMakifim. Eira literally means light. Orais, lights. Makifim, Hekef, the Malbim points out, is an enclosure on all sides. Hekef mikol sad. A Hekef means you've got an enclosure. So it sounds esoteric, but I think there are ways to really bring this down to earth, that everything gives off light, and what's beyond my mind, what I'm not yet able to conceive, that's called a Hekef, a Makifim. What I have perceived is called Panimi. It's already internalized. You've got it. So I'm going to give you a few examples so that it really gets simple. So let's dive in. We're in Torah Zion, paragraph Vav. V'al Yedei Zeh. Through this, she'oiskim nidaber echad im chaveru, when two people are talking to each other, lahachnis boi das v'yirat shemayim, and they're talking in Torah, Yirat Shemayim, and what ends up happening is they are putting das in each other and Yirat Shemayim, and this is a concept of being ma'amid talmidim, which I forgot to add in the review, is one of the main points of the tzaddik is that he leaves behind children, or Talmidim that continue the das that he's brought into the world. And that's the purpose of the Bria, the whole purpose of creation, was that human beings should not be physical human beings alone, but people who grow their minds to recognize Hashem is in the world, and the more they recognize him on a daily basis, minute by minute, that is the purpose of being in this world in the first place. So to be ma'amid talmidim literally means, it's a funny lashon in a way, means to stand up students. So what does that mean, stand up students? It actually is the lashon of Chazal, because the first Mishnah, which we mentioned once, in Perkei Avos, Perek Aleph Mishnah Aleph, the first Mishnah. So there, after describing the Masorah from Mipi Gvura, Moshe Rabbeinu was Makabel Torah, the mindset of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is what the Torah really is, Mipi Gvura from Hashem at Sinai, and he gave over to Shiur, and Shiur to the Zkenim to the Anshe Knesset, to the Nevi'im, and the Nevi'im to the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah. When the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, which was at the end of the Tkufa of the Torah Sheba'al Peh, being completely oral and being totally forbidden from being written down. Gittin is actually an Issa D'Oraisa that the Torah Sheba'al Peh should never be written down. It was never meant to be written down. This way, we're always tali on Shimush Hachamim and Tzadikim. That instead of becoming knowledgeable or Talmud Chacham from reading a Sefer, the Sefer can't teach you how to be. It can give you information, but it can't give you applications. The applications, even if you learn Shulchan Aruch, the real applications is Shimush HaChamim, where someone who apprentices to a real tzaddik, or if it's in halacha, to a real posek, so he learns from the personality of the posek how halacha is properly implemented. So the Torah Sheba'al Peh wanted to preserve that we would always be dependent on receiving the Torah from people who are living it. That's why a Talmid Hacham is called a Talmid Hacham. He's a student of a Hacham. The very term which you and I would say, oh really, he's a real Talmid Hacham, he's a huge Talmid Hacham, oh, that's complimentary. But if you ask yourself, so what are you actually saying? You're bringing attention to who he learned his Torah from. He's a Talmid of, and then you ask, where did you learn? Who are your Rebbeim, etc. So when it came the need to put it in writing, the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah formulated three things. This was the first three things they formulated. And one of them was Have Mutuni Mudim. Have, we've looked at that word before. It's an extremely important word. You'll find it dozens of times throughout Perkei Avos. Have means become. It means change who you are now and become something else. Hevu Mutuni Mudim. If I am impulsive, or what's another word for impulsive in English? In Persian they say likuchik. How do you say it in English? Impulsive?
More positive or negative?
More on the negative side. Impetuous, that's the word I was looking for. Impulsive or impetuous, like in a sudden thought, act on it. So comes along the Anshe Knesset HaGdolah, the first thing I tell you is Hevi Mutuni Mutim. Become someone who is careful in making decisions. So even though it's talking about Dayanim, but really it's referring to everybody. That's my Rosh Yeshiva in Gateshead, Rabbi Reb Leib Gurewitz, the father of Avram, when he was my Rosh Yeshiva. So he said this Mishnah can't be talking only to Dayanim, it's talking about to everybody. Everyone has to learn how to be careful when they make a decision. The next part, which is what this lashon in Rav Nachman is talking about, Vehemidu Talmidim Harbe. You got to stand up many students. The grammar isn't 100% accurate, because if you're talking about many students, the better way of saying it would be Harbe Talmidim. But it doesn't say that. It says Vehemidu, that is a very funny lashon, stand up, Talmidim Harbe. So actually the Harbe is not going on the Talmidim. It's telling a Rebbe to stand up your students many times. No matter how many times they fall, stand them up. Help them stand up until they can stand up on their own. So it's a very meduyak lashon. Rav Nachman is
simple pshat in the Mishnah?
Sorry?
That's a simple pshat
The
in the Mishnah?
majority of Mefarshim will go on the number of Talmidim. So it's talking about quantity. But actually, it really, if you look at the way the grammar is set up, usually when you want to say a noun and the adjective, and you want to put a dagesh on the adjective, you would say the adjective comes first. So harbe talmidim. Talmidim is the noun, but here it's hevemidu talmidim harbe, which is a bit of a strange lashon, but it brings attention to the fact that we're talking about not the quantity only, but actually the need for a teacher to stand up again and again. Stand up. That means give them the chizuk that no matter how many times they fall, start again. So Rav Nachman is talking about when a person is talking with each other, a good friend, in Yirat Shemayim, and they are injecting das in each other, and to be mamid, harbe talmidim, here means to stand them up as many times as necessary, because that's called kiyum, that's continuity. That when a person leaves this world, he's left behind children, talmidim, friends who became his talmid or student or child in the sense that he taught das or Yirat Shemayim. That is also the same bechina, the same aspect of what we're describing here. That you actually continue yourself. So your body, which is not the real you, when it's buried in the ground, not yours. When I get buried in the ground, if I have affected my children or students, then my das remains in the world. Your das remains in the world. The Ikar Ha'adam is a das, which was what Rav Nachman started off his Torah in Zion, explaining that the main human being is not the physical body, it's actually the mind. Rosh Hashanah is not the anniversary of the creation of the world. It's actually the anniversary of the creation of man. He was created on the sixth day, and that's Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the celebration of the creation of man, not his sinews and his skeletal system, his nervous system, his muscular system. It's a celebration of the main part of man, which is his das. And his das is able to make choices. So we're actually celebrating on Rosh Hashanah the power of Bechira. It's a celebration of the creation of the ability to make a choice. That's huge. That's what we're really celebrating. And this is what this Torah is really all about. I need das to get through this world and invest into eternity. So we're in the second line. Now he's introducing a whole new concept that when you're talking with a friend in Yirat Shemayim and Das, you bring into yourself and your friend oiros, lights, hamakifim, that are surrounding. Hekef is an enclosure. In the BRI translation, they call it transcendent perceptions. So I'm just gonna try and bring this down to earth as much as I possibly can. Everything is a hekef. Everything you're first introduced to is a hekef. So I'll give you a very simple example. A child is introduced to Aleph. Aleph is now a hekef. He's got a context. I'm going to call it context for now. This diagonal line and two smaller lines coming off the diagonal, that is an ois called an Aleph. Ois actually, strictly speaking, is such a perfect language, Lashon Kodesh, it reveals itself from itself. So an ois means a sign, amongst other things, but why is it a sign? Because it's a sign to the brain of what movement the brain tells the mouth to make to pronounce this ois, base. Oh, so the mind tells your mouth to close the lips in order to be able to then open them with a b sound, and the b is the initial starting sound of base. G, gimel, d, dalet, lamed, nun. So an ois is a sign to the brain of how to formulate the different parts of your mouth, your teeth, your lips, your tongue, etc. So an ois is a hekef, it's a makif. And before a child was introduced to oisius, his mind already has collected probably thousands of words that he's pronouncing as he talks, 2-3 years old. When he's introduced to oisius, round about turning 3 to 4 years old, that's when the Gemara tells us to be introduce children to oisius. The first time he's introduced to an ois, that's a hekef. He's created a circle that right now is becoming inside his mind. And what's that? That Aleph. When he's introduced to a base, it's a whole new world. Now he knows what a base is. It's got a b sound. It's got a name. He's introduced to Gimel, and it continues this way. But what's happening is that the hekef, each new ois, creates a larger circle of context of what he's able to access. And what's really extraordinary, it only takes 22 osius and 46 prefixes and 197 words, 197 shirashim, 2 3-letter root words, for the child to have a very decent chance of conquering Chumash, because that's the whole point of learning Aleph, Beis, Gimel. Because now, eventually, you're going to be able to read, and when you can read, you can access Hashem's Das, which is the starting point, is the Chumash, the Oraisa, from Lashon So what ends up happening is that the mind of the child is increasing its hekef, its enclosure, his context, and once he enters the world of reading and identifying a shoresh, and I'm not talking about rote teaching. Rote teaching is, I'm not going to tell you which religion it originates from. It's not very healthy, because without knowing how to identify a shoresh, a child could be taught hundreds and hundreds of words, but only knows them by rote translation, as opposed to what's the 2 or 3 letters shoresh, and then when he learns the shimushim, the prefix suffixes, he can modify the meaning of that word, and he understands its meaning. Then his mind can ask questions. It's all preparation for the mind to grow. So I'll give you one small example. And when it comes to prefixes, the child's introduced to a vav. So here you've got a physical vav, and a vav in Hebrew means hook, because that's what a vav is. It's actually literally a hook. It's actually this week's parasha, Perek Kafei, in Parashas Truma, the first time the letter vav appears in the Torah at the beginning of a word, not as a prefix, but as part of the word, is in the word vave hamudim, the hooks of the Mishkan, the Kroshim. So a hook is in order to connect something to something else. So as soon as I teach a vav to the children as a prefix, I tell them, let's open up a Sefer Torah, and we've only learned, let's say, about 12 Lashon HaKodesh words. We know Yom, Haaretz, Laila, Choshech, Bara, Elokim. We've learned a few words, and then you open up a Sefer Torah and ask the children. They're barely reading fluently. They're only starting now to read Shirashim, learning Shirashim. They just learned one prefix. Look inside the Sefer Torah and find me a vav at the beginning of a word, because a vav means and. It's a connector. That's what vav is. It's a hook. It hooks the word that came before to what comes after. And the children will look inside and they'll say, oh my gosh, almost every pasuk and every paragraph, these aren't ptuchos and stumos, begins with a vav. And what ends up happening is that by teaching a child, excuse me, every single ice that you teach, and especially the prefix suffixes, you're not teaching them one piece of information. You're giving them access to thousands of meanings. Do you follow? And because of that, you're creating a bigger and wider hekef. The broader the hekef, the broader this literally is a closed circle. That's what a Makifim really are. The more context you've created, the more the mind of the child broadens. He has a deeper and broader access to understanding the world. Is this making sense?
How does it make it broader?
Once the child knows, let's say, all Aleph base and all the Nekudos, 9 Nekudos, 22 letters of Aleph base, and he knows all the prefixes and suffixes, and he knows only 197 Shirashim. There are 16,000 words, 16,258 words in the whole of Chumash. If you don't mind counting it, not now, at the end of the class. So out of the 16,258 words, if you know 197 Shirashim, they repeat themselves so frequently, and you know all 46 prefix suffixes, you can make sense out of 13,000 words. So you just need 197 Shirashim, almost 200, 46 prefix suffixes, and you know the oisius and the nekudos, then you can make sense out of 13,000 words. Do you understand how exponentially the child's mind is growing because of such a small number of words? So that is called an exponential expansion of the mind, which is what we're talking about when we're talking about Eres HaMakifim. And there's many examples. I'll just give you a couple more. The womb is a hekef. The child's inside the womb, and that's its whole world. When the child exits that world, he enters a universe, a physical universe, immeasurably greater than the size of the world he just came from. And when his eyes open for the first time, and his ears he can hear, he can now take in information, images, and sounds, and his brain is actually associating every sound with every image until eventually he chaps from the law of frequency. Oh, this face is my mother and her name is Mummy. Mummy loves you, Daddy loves you. And you're my daddy. That's my brother Chaim. That's my sister Chana. And the child's brain starts collecting hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of words before they're even speaking. But once you teach them Aleph Beis, now you're giving them access to a whole world of literature. When you teach them ABC, you're doing the same thing. A whole world of literature is open to them now that they can read. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 1 through 9 and 0, you're teaching them the whole world of math. Math is infinite. There's no end of numbers that you can... There's a book out a long time ago called Moonwalking with Einstein. It's a book on memory. And there's something called Mental Olympics. It takes place every year in England. And you got these people who are going for gold medal, and they memorize enormous amounts of information. I'm not going to go into any details. So there was one guy there who was certain he was going to win because he had memorized pi, the number pi, 3.164, etc., to 20,000 spaces. After the competition, he came second because there was a Japanese 16-year-old who had memorized pi to 60,000 places. He was suicidal. He spent a whole year doing this. Now, the point. What is the point? How to get onto this?
Opening up a world of...
0 to 9.
Sorry?
Moonwalking with Einstein.
Moonwalking with Einstein. Okay, so pi is an infinite number, and that means you've got something in the physical world called numbers that are quantities. It actually starts with spheres. I'm not going into it now. It's a fascinating study. There are 10 spheres, and they correspond to the 1 through 9 and 0. But once you know math, because a sefer is sefirot, literally means quantifications. Quantifications from the word sipur, which is a story, and there's a sequence from the word mispar, which is a number. That's the real meaning of once you sefer comes from the same. Every single word in Lashon HaKodesh, once you know its root, all the roots are connected. So sefer, mispar, sipur, a sefer, it's all connected. Once you put it together, then you get a much broader picture of what the meaning of that word is in a fuller sense. So Rav Nachman was talking here about Ores HaMakifim, that when you learn a makif, it extends your mind. So a child in the womb is in one makif. He comes out into the physical world, is huge in comparison. Then when the physical body dies, the body goes into the womb of the ground, but the neshama, which was inside the body, goes into a whole new dimension, a whole new makif, which is of course Olam HaEmes, Olam Haba. And at each time, what he thought was the fullest possible picture, now gets so shaded in comparison to the bigger picture that it's a joke. His concept and his hasagas of reality is a joke in comparison to his new access. What he's able to... Is this making sense? So every single area of life is a hekef, everything. And when you expand on it, you expand the consciousness, if you want to call it, that expanded consciousness, as it's called, or you're increasing your ability to make sense out of a much bigger picture. There are a lot of other examples. Let's say for a telescope, we always thought until 1924, that's only 102 years ago, till 1924, all astronomers agreed that the entire universe was the galaxy of the Milky Way. They couldn't see beyond it. And then Sir Edwin Hubble came along in 1924. He invented a telescope which was used till very recently. It's still a satellite called the Hubble satellite. It's able to see over 2 trillion galaxies. Each galaxy holds between 2 and 300,000 stars. That's not even talking about planets. You've got trillions and trillions of planets. But the point is that every time we get a new technology, it enables us to enlarge our hekef so that we've got a much broader context of reality. Is this making sense? And the same goes with the microscope. The microscope completely changed everything, especially with germs. If you look under a microscope at a dust mite, it looks like a dinosaur. It's huge. Now, if you look at an atomic microscope, you look at this dust mite is frightening. They look really frightening. and they dust all over the place, especially carpets. And these dust mites, they look like literally like dinosaurs. Then under an atomic microscope, you'll see other dinosaurs that are clinging, and they're microscopic, and they're clinging to these microscopic dust mites. And it goes on and on and on. And the same with atoms. Now we know the atoms and the protons and neutrons are not the smallest elements. Now there's something called quarks and leptons, which are even smaller. So that the more we advance in technology, the more we see l'gdulasoi ein heker. To Hashem has no end of how much you're going to look for his independence. Gadol means independence. That all of this is powered by Hashem. So all these are examples where the more we discover, the bigger our mind expands, so to speak. Any questions on this point? The more money you have, your whole hekef changes. Your buying power. People who are multi-billionaires, they don't need so much money. So their expansive context of how much they can contribute and influence, hopefully l'toiv, that is huge. And it all comes from, every coin is a hekef. In fact, even in the physical world, we have cameras, we have the technology almost for 100 years, but it's really got much more sophisticated, that we can actually detect the electromagnetic field around a human body and around a coin, around a leaf. Every single physical object and organic object is giving off an aura. I just bought this book called The Coming Revolution, Science Discovers the Truths of the Bible by Zamir Cohen. So it's fascinating articles. But here on page 264, the human aura, and he goes into tefillin afterwards, but he shows you photographs that are taken by the Kirlian camera. And this, for example, is a leaf. But what's amazing about this leaf giving off this aura is that half of the leaf has already been removed, and yet the aura now taken off the leaf afterwards is the same with a human being who's had an amputee. You'll see the other leg still there. The phantom leg is still there. Meaning there's an aura that continues. And that's what people who've actually physically died and then came back after being medically claimed dead. And Dr. Rosenberg can tell us more about that. I think you died twice, is that right? Or was it
Three
once?
times in the hospital, but I have no recollection
Oh.
of me going.
Okay, so you didn't have a life after life experience,
No.
but you did medically die.
I did die.
Right, so welcome back. So, but the point that's brought out is that many people who had a life after life experience describe how they would meet in Olam HaEmes all their relatives that they had lost in their lifetime and even beyond. And what was amazing is that there's no physical body there, but there was the aura outlined, the light of that person to the smallest detail. So that is what the neshama is actually shining. And it's interesting that the word aura, A-U-R-A in English, sounds very much like or. So that's probably the origin. But it's a fascinating article. And then this is what really threw people in when Zamir Cohen gave this presentation in a university in Israel. So one particular secular professor was fascinated by this, and then Zamir Cohen showed him how to do this experiment where they took 11 secular professors, and they took the photos of the light that they exuded, and then they took the same professor, put tefillin on his head and arm, and showed that the light changed completely. So that was fascinating, and it worked with all 11. It was a very, very interesting experiment. So the basic point is that the tefillin, because they actually give off a special aura, and it's the aura of light that corresponds to a spiritual madrega, is something that is taking place. So everything is a makif, everything. But what Rav Nachman is talking about is not so much spiritual Makifim right now. Makifim is talking about when a person's das expands and they realize, oh my gosh, it's really not my wife who's driving me crazy. She's only a loudspeaker, and Hashem is speaking through a microphone in Shemayim, through my wife, through my kids, through my neighbor, through my chavrusa, through my boss, through my children, through my grandchildren, through my... have I covered everybody? So Ein Oid Milvadai is the ultimate das, that the only, so to speak, person that I am really interfacing with is you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kol HaKol B'dei Shemaim, Chutz Miyot Shemaim. So I've got to go straight to the ultimate therapist and deal with him directly. And it's through tefillah that we can change our world. So let's continue. I'm sorry I gave you a bit of a longer introduction. I'll start off the paragraph again, paragraph Vav, and read through quickly. V'al yedei zeh, through this, she'oiskim lidaber echad im chaver, the one person speaking with his friend. Lahachnis b'y das, and the intent is to put new das into that mind. V'yirat shemayim, ulahamid talmidim, and to stand up many students. Al yedei zeh, through this, nichnasim ores ha-makifim. The lights of these makifim enter the mind. That means to say, he is now worthy to understand and know something that he did not know before. He did not know this was Aleph, a base, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. And each time he adds on, he is discovering something he did not know before, and it increases his hekef of what he's able to access. $1 million, that's nice, but 100 million, that's much nicer. And in terms of what can a person do with that? It's not how many cars and homes he can build, it's how much more contribution he can make. So he says in parentheses, which we're actually going to look at later on, what a person understands, umasig, and reaches, bisikhloi, with his mind, the part of the mind that is able to evaluate, that's what seichel refers to, zeh bechinas pnimi. What you've already understood, that is internal. You know this is an aleph, this is a base, this is gimel. You know this word is ben. You know that the prefix vav means and. Ula, and to. Ula banecha, and to your children. You know that the yud before the end of chaf is plural, and chaf means you or your. So now you can read the word ula banecha, and to your children. So that is a hekef that keeps getting broader and broader until a person is able to make sense out of all of Tanakh. Then he learns Tarek Mitzvahs, he can make sense out of Mishnayos, and Mishnayos is the skeleton of Gemara. And so each one is a new hekef. As he learns halacha, he can see where in the machlokes in the Gemara the halacha originates from, etc. So once he understands something, that's called pnimi. Now it's internal. Because this seichel, this new seichel, enters into his mind that which he cannot yet ready perceive. He's not ready for. He doesn't either have the physical, not the physical. It could be physical money. He doesn't have money yet to afford. But it means his mind cannot reach a certain hasaga. What is not yet ready to perceive, he can't access. That is the next, if you want to call it a circle, that he doesn't have access to. That item that he hasn't yet entered into, so to speak, is actually surrounding his head. So it's rather like, if I give a marshal of a telescope, each time you up the magnitude of what you can see through the telescope or microscope, you increase the picture with much more detail. But you can't do that until you turn up the magnitude or reach of the telescope. So it's the same with the mind. The more information a person knows, the more questions he's able to ask. Because you can compare similarities, contrast more differences. The more information you know, the more kashas you can have. It's not a point to have kashas, but the more questions you have, the more distinctions you're now able to determine based on the answers. The more answers you're able to access as well. So what ends up happening, the mind keeps growing and growing and growing. Is this making sense so far? He's not yet able, it's impossible for him at this particular point to enter this new hekef into his mind. He just can't understand it, it's beyond him. For him it's a bechina of a makif that he's not able to access. So how can you access it? This is an amazing thought. When you speak to people, and you put in them your das, you share with them your das. Nimsa Now, this is a very interesting language. Nimsa comes out, Shinitroiken Moichai, he empties out his mind, his brain, Ma'aseichel v'hadas shehayalai, from the seichel and das he did have, and because now he's made room in his mind, we're going to have to understand this, because there's no physical space that's really referred to here. It's borrowed language in order for us to understand. So I'll try and explain in a few moments. When you empty out your mind in speaking to someone else about what's on your mind, that makif that was waiting to enter your brain, now there's room for it, it can actually go inside. By giving over your mind to someone else, you've made room to allow this new hekef. Now that makif that was outside of you enters. Now you get a new seichel of the makif. Now he can understand something that before he wasn't able to. So I'll give you a very simple example of this. Let's say, just for argument's sake, you're looking at the speaker at this moment. So your brain, interestingly, is more busy getting rid of what the mind is not interested in than what you actually see. Your eyes, which is not what you see with your mind. Your eyes, in its panoramic view, you might be looking, let's say, just in this direction. And you might see a glass frame. You probably are not paying attention to it. You see a slight beard. You're probably not paying much attention to it. You might see the formation of teeth. And behind me, you can see the rest of the tent. And you see furniture. You see colors. You see light. Your mind, if it's, let's say, focused on the speaker, your brain is emptying out much more than it's taking in. Do you follow? And this happens all the time. Your eyes, when you're driving, your eyes hopefully are more focused on the road in front of you, and you're consulting the rear mirror and the side mirrors from time to time to get a context, a hekef of what's around you. And it happens to be that actually your eye is taking in probably hundreds of thousands of pieces of other information. Your eyes are seeing brick walls of buildings and other cars, and whatever's not relevant, your eye is reporting it all to your brain, but whatever's not relevant, your brain shuts out, but it went in. So actually, this is not an exaggeration. Your mind is actually more filtering out than it is filtering in throughout your life. And the more you learn language, aleph base, and then words, and you listen to tone and facial expressions, your mind is able to read much, much more than just what's in print, because now you're interfacing with a human being. That's why texting is antisocial. Everything in the media, I shared this before, everything in the media, if you want to know their true agenda, just reverse the name they've given it. So social media actually means anti-social media. I'm totally serious. Every single area of that, credit cards are really debt cards. They're not credit cards. When they're inviting you for additional credit over and above all the other credit you presently have, they are inviting you for additional debt over and above all the other debt you presently have. It's all just, life insurance is really death insurance. It's not life insurance. Only kicks in after I'm out of here. So it's all played with words, and if you want to know the real agenda, just reverse 180 degrees in the other direction and you'll understand what they're talking about. Every commercial works that way. They're not selling people who are not properly dressed. When I was a kid, my father took me to the motor show in London. I'm not going to get too graphic, but it was I was into sports cars, whatever. I was just a young kid, 9 years old, and on top of every sports car there was an Isha dressed for Miami Beach, and I said to my father, Abba, if I get that car, do you also get the Isha? What you doing on top of the car? London is not a warm place to live. What is going on? He said, they're not selling cars. They're selling emotional expectations of what you will look like image-wise and what you'll attract in your life if you drive a car like this. It's so cool. So it's all about the exact reverse. I'm not cool at all. I'm so foolish that I'll pay money to look cool. But what about the inside? The real hekef is going on inside my mind. What am I building my mind with? So most of your brain is actually emptying out what you don't need, but it's still going in. There was a fascinating case, I don't remember how long ago, this was about 40 years ago. There was a school bus that was hijacked. I don't remember how many kids on the bus. And this is before there were cameras on all the streets, way before. So the FBI were investigating because there were a lot of children that had been kidnapped on this bus, and they were interviewing cars that had been behind this bus. Finally, they got to one car that driver who had driven for a specific amount of time behind this bus, and they asked him, does he remember the number plate? Of course not. So then they brought in a therapist that was able to put him into what do you call it when hypnosis. Thank you. And so he was hypnotized, and under hypnosis he remembered every single part of the plate number and all other details that they needed, and they were able to find retrieve the children. It was the point that I took from there is that the brain takes in everything, but the vast majority of what your eyes see and report to your mind is not interested in and doesn't need, and so it kind of dumps it. But actually it dumps it maybe in your subconscious, whatever you want to call it, but it's there. And there are ways actually to retrieve it. In Olam HaEmes, everything is retrieved, but only what we really chose to focus on, and that's Bechira. Our next thought is always Bechira in your next thought. You get lots of pop-ups you may not be able to immediately control. You're always in control of your next thought. That's how Bechira really works. So if a person sees something they don't want to see or don't want to remember, and they say, Rosalind, please help me to knock that out, and they work on themselves and don't make a big fight out of it, it's possible the person in his next thought can simply move to what Hashem wants me to think about. Okay, v'yesh kama bechinos b'makifim. There's lots of aspects to
Why
these.
is that when you get rid of, when I'm passing on someone else, my seichel and nikon, why am I getting new makif?
Why am I getting new makif? So if the conversation is about Yirat Shemayim, and it's a conversation of how to get close to Hashem, how to see Hashem's hashgacha pratis in this situation I just shared with my friend, that was not the best situation. So what ends up happening, I'm showing Hashem that I want to go in a specific direction. So what does Hashem do? He actually, so to speak, empties out through my mouth what I'm talking about, and Kaviyachal makes room in my mind.
Empty, because I still have it. I don't lose it when I give it over to someone else.
So the fact, let's say, so this is something I didn't get into in full last week, but one of the Nekutas HaChaver is that the main job of a friend is to pick me up when I fall, or help me see the good in what I'm going through, instead of agreeing with me to the point where he says, you know what, I don't see any way out of this. I think you should just divorce. That's based on what you're telling me, you should really get divorced. The more you delay, the more harm you're going through. So, I have a friend who I don't want to say his name, a Rav in a different country. So a balabas of his came to him. He wants to help him divorce his daughter from her husband. They married a few years. So he said, don't come to me for divorce. You can come to me for shalom bayis. Tell me what I can do. He said he's even willing to travel to the other country where the couple live. He's willing to travel there to help them. So the Nekutas HaChaver is to help a person see another dimension which can actually be what Hashem really wants from me. And that's really a Nekutas HaChaver, because it means that if I'm going in that direction, the Nekutas HaChaver can help me see, well, why did you marry this person in the first place? What were the virtues you originally connected to? And then keep at it. What else do you like about this person? What else do you love? What else do you admire? Why didn't you get divorced till now? Oh, because of these virtues that you're hanging on to, and keep holding on to them and verbalizing them. Turn the marriage around that way, because it's got to start over here. So that's like your das going into my das and then me
I'm
translating
not
it.
losing my das.
Sorry?
I'm not losing my das when I'm sharing it.
No, you're
I'm
not.
saying the Sroikim. It says, Nimtze the Sroikim moichem haseh.
Yes, because what you've done is you've emptied out a previous hasaga that I think I'm cornered over here. I've got to. I think I've got to throw this kid out of the house. Or someone goes to the Menahel and says the Rebbe goes to the Menahel and says this kid in my class is a bad apple and it's ruining the whole class. So he goes to a Rav and the Rav says, look, this actually was a story that actually happened with the Chazon Ish. He was the Menahel wanted to get rid of a kid, so the Chazon Ish told him in Dinei Nefashos, which is what you're asking me to paskin on, you need 23 dayanim. So get me 22 more, and then we'll then he told him, but if you really want to get rid of this kid, here's how to do it. You've got to set up a time every single day that you'll learn one-on-one with him. And if you don't see any change, you've got to find another yeshiva for this kid, and after he leaves, you've got to carry on one-on-one every single day. Because then you're showing that you're not trying to throw him out, you love the kid. This is, that piece of information changes the mind of the Rebbe or Menahel and empties out previous Havaminas of options. It empties out those options because now there's new options. I was once, I'm a consultant for various situations, so once, I'm not going to give you details, I worked with a particular kid and the school wanted to throw him out. Wasn't getting on with the Rebbe and was always being sent to the principal, so I met with the parents and the kid and the social worker, the psychologist of the school, and the Menahel of Kodesh and the Menahel of Chayil. And the Menahel opened up the discussion. Oh, we love, I won't say the boy's name, we love so-and-so. I said, I daven for him every single day. So after he finished his speech, I never did this before, but I did it then. I said to the Menahel, with all due respect, since you say you love him, can you please tell me what's his favorite hobby? Blank. I said, since you told me you daven for him every day, please tell me what's his Hebrew name? Blank. What's his Hebrew name? So you're davening for him, what's his Hebrew name? Blank. And Hashem should forgive me because I'm sure he was embarrassed. They still threw the kid out. The kid was 9 years old. Can you believe that? 9 years. How bad can a 9-year-old? A kid who's 9 years old is a tzaddik gamor. Sorry?
I believe you for only one reason, because we see it every day happening.
You see, Rahman al-Islam. But the point I'm bringing out is there was nothing wrong with the kid. I worked with the kid. That's how I knew his hobbies. So the point is, one piece of information can turn everything around. So this kid was rejected by, I don't want to say how many, but it was well more than 10 more yeshivas, because they took the report from the first yeshiva that then he went to a yeshiva, I don't mind telling you which one it was, it's Breuer's in Washington Heights, and Rabbi Mahler was not interested in what the other yeshiva had to say for why they threw him out. He just wanted to meet the kid. And he met the kid and said, I'll take him on. In 2 years, guess how many instances there have been? 0. Nice round number. Because he was looking for what's good about the kids. What's he like? Which Rebbe he can set him up with. It's all relationships. And that creates a new hekef. When a person injects an understanding, there's other options of how to look at myself and understand what I've been through, and even have compassion on myself, and maybe even switch the self-pity, into admiration for how much I've been through, and I'm still staying firm and strong. Wow! And now I've got a whole new hekef, a whole new context of who I am, and that empties out the old options, so that when I start beating myself up, I'm no good. What do you mean no good? Look at what you've been through. Yeah, I never thought of it that way. Yeah, I'm much stronger than I thought. I'm not a loser. I'm a fighter. I'm not just a fighter. I'm a survivor, and I'm a thriver. So it is talking about letting go of old options.
The one who's the Sorokin he's speaking about is the person who gives that.
Yes,
not
correct.
who receives it.
Yes, it goes both ways, but he's referring to the one who gives now makes room as he's emptied out his mind into the other person.
That became fact, so there's room for new concept.
Yes, especially if his mechazik is chaver in Yirat Shemayim, so that's a schus. It's a huge schus. He's increased the das of the person he's speaking to. So this is a description of a formula that Hashem is a chesed, that my mind gets emptied out, and that makes it ready for a new hekef. Is this making sense? It's a totally different way of looking at life, where a conversation is an opportunity for injecting in the conversation some sort of chizuk, so that it's not just. I know my Rebbe Chaim Kramer does that all the time, and it always comes from left field. You can talk about any subject under the earth, politics and sports, anything you want, and one way or another he'll find a way to bring hashgacha pratis into it, and it's never with a force. It's not like with an agenda. It's just it finds a way to show that it's really hashgacha pratis. And then you remind yourself, yeah, I'm going through hashgacha pratis. I'm not going through Yisurim. Okay. V'yesh. Any other comments?
Nisroiken means that the person, your chava, actually emptied it out. It doesn't really refer to the word that I emptied out my bucket. Is that possible?
So
I allowed myself to empty out. To empty.
Yeah, but the language here is, I think, pointing in the direction that it's the person who's talking who's emptying out his seichel into the mind of the other person, and by doing so, he's actually making room for the hekef, the makif that he didn't have access to till now. A makif is something that right now is beyond me, and I can't reach. And one of the ways to reach it is that either I'm giving new information that gives me access to it, or in this particular case, we're talking about having a conversation with another person where the mind actually empties out of whatever it is that they're sharing, and so to speak, makes room for a new insight. I can say on a personal level that it used to be many times when I would prepare a new lecture. So I would often start with a title and build on it. And as I would do research, it went in a completely different direction than my original intent. I thought I had a message I want to share. But as I did the research, the information that kept coming up would send my mind in a whole new direction, and it enabled me to have a much broader and deeper insight into what I was looking into. And that happened many times. Then what happened next, and this happened the vast majority of times as well, is that instead of me following the notes of the lecture that I prepared for many, many, many hours, I ended up on so many other tangents that it still was kind of relevant, but it was so interesting to me that during the lecture itself, I'm not sure if I should call them chidushim, so to speak, but a new insight into what I had been learning came out my mouth in the moment that I was lecturing, or in the Q&A, or sometimes in the middle when someone would ask a question, the answer was something that I didn't have before, but it actually enabled me to have a deeper insight. So I'm using the language which Rav Nachman is using over here, which is when you speak, you're emptying out. I'm offering different examples of what that means. When you're emptying out, you're making room for something else. It doesn't mean physical room, obviously, and even in the spiritual realm, there is no space that's constricted in your mind, so to speak. It's like Rav Nachman talks about, oh my gosh, I forget where the Torah is. Maybe someone can remember. There's a Torah that he talks about, Lo yam mushat Torah hazeh mipicha, that if you don't make it mamashos, then you enable your mind, since it's not a mamashos, your mind is not it's not physical. You actually let your mind be open to receive information, and it stays there. But when I make it mamashos, so then it's like Rav Nachman brings like a kli. If you've got a kli, you can only fill it up to how big the kli is. After that, if you want to put more things inside, you've got to take some of the stuff out to put more in. So a person's mind is a mamashos, is for gaiva, it's for taiva, it's for impressing other people. Then what ends up happening is I make my mind into a dava mamash. So if I want to learn something new that I haven't learned before, Hashem says, okay, let's empty out some of the stuff that's already in there, and I don't remember. Why? Because I turned Torah into mamashos. So It's not that the mind has a physical. It's not a physical kli in that sense, but metaphorically speaking, that actually is reality. And then when a person is ma'ayin, the humility is really down to close to a zero, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Then Moshe Rabbeinu, who you think, hey, no one worked harder than Moshe Rabbeinu on his midas. We talked about that from last mission in Kiddushin. Yachin Boyaz brings the whole story there, how Moshe Rabbeinu worked on his midas, and that's why Hashem found him so precious and gave him so much, gave him everything. But Moshe Rabbeinu, so interesting that we describe him in our davening, we describe him as Yismach Moshe, not beYigias Chelkai. We don't say Moshe Rabbeinu is happy in the toil, the tremendous effort that he put into his chelik of Torah and everything else. No, it's b'matnat Chelkai. He saw everything that he ever received from Hashem in terms of the mind, pure gift. And so he only became more and more humble. So we'll get to it when we get to the end of this paragraph and then into the next one. Ha'tachlis ha'yideh shelo neda is that the more a person knows, the more he realizes there's more to know. And that's very humbling. So Moshe Rabbeinu, the deeper and broader his understanding of Torah was, and Dveikus, etc., the more he realized, oh my gosh, I haven't started, there's so much more. And each world he entered was so much bigger than the previous. Exactly like the example I gave earlier of the womb. A child in the womb, if you ask him, hey, how's life? He said, hey, it's great. It's so warm in here. I got insulation. No one bothers me. I've got food coming into my stomach directly through the umbilical cord. It's like Gan Eden here. And then he's sucked out, so to speak, and he enters a world where his eyes open and he sees everything in 3D, 3-dimension, full color. His legs unfold. He eventually learns to walk, interface with the world al yadei through his hands, and there's a whole big world out there. I have a personal friend who's been to 163 countries out of 193 countries. It's a lot of traveling. He's done it in the last 10 years. It's a huge world. It's huge. There's so much variety. And that's before you go explore other planets like Elon Musk. It's a huge universe. And that's just the physical world. We came from the womb. So every time a person enters the world of Torah and discovers yet another level and another level, each new level is so broader than the previous that it not just dwarfs, it makes a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, and it is humbling because now the person can realize how much more is there. And that's what Rav Nachman will talk about, when he gets to paragraph Zayin, he's going to talk about the tzaddik, who's this Hacham Hador, and the Rebbe Hador is someone who can reach the highest people and show them that there's so much more still to go. Not as a put down, but as a turn on. There's so much more. Don't give up just because you're 60, 70, 80 years old. There's so much more to learn. There's so much more to accomplish. So much more hispainus or hispaidus that a person can have and grow their mind. There's so much more chesed that a person can do. It's limitless. Especially with today's technology, you can do chesed, unbelievable what we can do with reaching so many people. There's no end to everything that's in the world of Ruchnius. There's no end to it. So, we've only got 2 minutes, so just see if I can finish a particular point. V'yesh kama bechinos makifim, b'makifim. There's a lot of aspects to makifim. Ki masha makif lezeh, for the makif, the access this person has to the world that he looks at, hu bechinos penimi etzel chavero. His friend, when he hears my insights, he's thinking, oh, really? That's very nice for you. But for him, he had that a long time ago. It's way beyond it. It's already panimius. It's already internal. Because he's much higher than me. This goes on and on and on. There is a concept of the mind that the mind itself is a hekef to someone else's mind. But to another person, when they hear what's on this person's mind, it's so pathetic that it's considered lower than what he already understands, way lower. So let's say you've got someone who's really broken his cars. So he's still got to break. Gaz and Gaiva are really twins. That's what Rambam kind of puts them together in Chilchas Tes and Perik Beis. He puts them together, the two worst midas ra'os. But a person, let's say, when he starts to get beyond his class, he notices how there's certain things that are triggering others that for him doesn't bother him anymore. And when he gets to that, so he's now got a choice. Is he going to be humble about it, or is he going to be a Balgaiva about it? If he's a Balgaiva, in a latent, invisible way, he's being angry about that guy. I'm much better than you. So, but it's heck of heck. There's Makifim. So, if someone is on a much higher level, and he sees someone who's astounded by a new insight, that insight, for the persons on the higher level, is like learning ABC. But when a person speaks with Yirat Shemayim and he puts into his friend's mind his das, now the makif that was outside of that person's mind enters his mind, and this goes on and on and on. Everyone, according to the madrega he's on, nichnas makif shaloi lifnim. Eventually, the makif that's waiting around outside of his mind will enter it. So I'll finish the next part next week, because then we'll go over time. Any questions?
Isn't it the pshat from? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but to learn it so. But it seems like the Makifim, the way he describes it is, it's like a hose that's rolled up completely.
Yeah, very good.
And and this is probably pshat what the Melech said. Become a lamdei skalti also, that it's like a rope, and as the more you suction out from the faucet, the more opportunity you get to get to absorb the
range.
The further
Spray.
range that you need a flow.
Right.
Otherwise, it's closed. Now the hose is closed. It's rolled up. There's
Right.
a lot of chachma in the makifim.
Right.
But in order for you to absorb it inside you, is only by actually
Letting out.
by letting out.
Excellent.
And by letting out is where you
Letting out is letting in.
Is letting in. So basically, you have. This is why a lot of the makifim, if you were letting out enough, you got to number 1,000 much quicker than your friend.
Interesting.
So by you it's already cycle. It's
Right.
still by him makifim.
Excellent.
And the way to achieve it is actually by letting out.
Yeah, excellent. By
and
sharing more and
that
more.
actually tells us what Mukamlam De Skalti means.
Excellent.
The Melech said,
Right.
because I had the vast amount of Tamidim, this is what enabled me to get to number 1,000,
Right.
to number 10,000 of the Chachma. I think it fits
Right. It
very,
fits
well
very
with
well.
what Nachman says.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
No?
Because of the
that enlightens-
Mikol Melamdai Miskalti is the pasuk that that Chazal bring for Ezu Hacham Haloi Met Mikol Adam. So once it's Mikol Adam, afilu katan, afilu akum, it makes no difference. Now a person's real Chachma is that Hashem, you're speaking to me through everybody. So how receptive will I be to that? And the pasuk that is the makar for that is Mikol Melamdai Hiskalti. So David HaMelech was definitely that bechina, definitely that category.
Is there a way to actually?
Thank you for sharing that.
Is there a way to let information that comes into your brain literally out, so it's not within?
So that what?
Is there a way to let information or things that come into your brain out, so like you would empty something? Is there, or does everything stay in?
So that's a very fair question. I think in the world of teshuvah, that's an extremely valid question. If someone doesn't want certain information that has gone in, he wants it out, or memories, or images, he wants it out. So I think that would probably come from his spoitas coming. Rebbeinu Shalom, you exposed me to in this childhood to what you made me see or experience, and I'm asking you. I'm at a place where I don't want that to be part of my mind anymore. Please help me to be Masich Das. I know it's probably in the recesses of my mind, but whenever I get pop-up, but please, I just want to be emptied of it. So I think the.
But I mean actually.
Yeah.
Let it out.
So Reb
it's not
Zera,
there
he
anymore.
fasted.
I don't mean a bad experience.
No,
It
no.
could be anything.
So Reb Zera fasted 40 days, I think it was, to forget all his Torah that he learned in the Chutz La'aretz, so that when he would enter Eretz Yisrael, his mind would be completely fresh, a new clean slate to print on his mind, so to speak, the Torah of Eretz Yisrael, which is obviously higher than Chutz La'aretz. So,
But that is a good. That's actually a perfect answer because he didn't want it to leave him completely. He didn't want to give up the Torah that
But
he
I'm
learned.
talking about
He
leaving
was
completely.
willing to
is
give
my
up.
question.
Is
My
it
question is leaving completely.
good memories or memories you
No,
don't?
just information. The reason it stimulates that
What,
question.
so what's the motive to get rid of it?
Well, I remember my father used to say that he had the ability to forget something and it's gone.
Yes.
And I never understood what he said, and he wasn't the type to explain.
Right.
So I'm wondering, do you have the ability to
Yes,
really
for
let
sure.
it go by?
For
and
sure.
It doesn't exist anymore.
We quoted last week in Hilchos Deis and then also in Mesilas Yesharim Perek Yud Aleph. They talk about the Issa of Natira. And Natira is the Issa, it's a lotion of Shmira, is to remember, guard the memory of things people have said or done to hurt me. And that a person should be Masir Das to the point where he forgets about the whole thing. So if it could be that a person might be reminded years later and you're like searching, oh, I have a vague recollection of that. But it's so vague because he hasn't thought about it since, in years and years and years.
But it's still there then.
It could, there's nothing that's not still there, but I think there's just levels of consciousness that we're talking about over here. But the Torah does want me on certain things not to remember what people said or did.
I'm not thinking so much emotion. It's just there's so much information. Can you delete it so that you can?
I don't think it's a
refresh
button,
it?
but yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it needs even more research. Any other comments or questions? Yeah.
Yeah, wanted to clarify the person who everything that the other person is saying is so pashut to him.
Right.
He's still receiving in that place.
So that's a fair question. The point he's bringing is that it's not always that I'm in a conversation where what I'm going to hear is going to pull me up like this, but what I'm hearing is what I heard down there. I don't know if a person wants to think it through. Why, Hashem, are you speaking to me about something that for me I think is a davar pashut? That's possible, or just to celebrate the fact that the other person is growing because now they've gone up a notch. But I don't have a better answer than that. Yeah. And comments, questions?
Yes, sir. Thank
Okay,
you all
thank
for
you.
joining.
Thank you very much.
We're live
you.
every Sunday for those
Thank you very much.
Up to you.
Make it